On this episode of Locked On Angels, Jack Kochanowicz is making it very difficult on the Halos to not put him in the starting rotation. But will they? We're going to discuss that and recap all the weekend games for you. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Happy Monday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our fourth season here as the host of Locked On Angels. We're gearing up for the 2025 season, taking you through all the spring training games from the weekend, talking Angels baseball 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every single weekday. We're going to get into some of the details about the games and then a lot of questions that have come out of this weekend, including some really big roster decisions that the Angels are going to have to make here, Mike. So let's get started with Thursday versus the Mariners.
Yeah, Thursday's game finished in an exciting tie, but that actually is not what mattered about that game. What mattered was that Kyren Paris was able to give the Angels a lead for a short time. They came back. He hit a bases-clearing double with 2 outs in the 7th inning. And, John, we've talked a lot about Kyren Paris on this show. He's somebody that you're hyped about, I'm hyped about, and there's a lot of chatter around Kyren Paris in regards to everydayers and Angel fans. And a lot of the chatter is about how he's swinging the bat. And we've insinuated some Aaron Judge type of movement, but actually, John, that is not inaccurate. It's something that he actually is intending to do. Yeah. There's a great article in the Sporting Tribune about what Paris did this offseason to be Aaron Judge-like. Why don't you get us started?
Yeah, so just to recap, last season, Paris hit just 118 with a 440 OPS, and that's when he knew that something needed to change. He paid close attention to the hitters in the batter's box, took notes. That's what you want to hear out of a player trying to make the roster, right? Out of all the players that Kyren Paris watched, one stood out to him, and it was Aaron Judge, Mike. He noted how simple Judge's movement was, and that there's something he wanted to emulate there in his batting swing and stance and approach. So Paris decided to go to St. Louis to work with Judge's personal hitting coach, Richard Shank. Shank is known as Teacher Man on social media. He's a polarizing figure in the baseball world because of his unorthodox drills and hitting philosophies. But based on the article from the Sporting Tribune, it worked, didn't it?
Yeah, it did work. And here's some of the things that he learned. Paris said that the biggest thing is being ready at release from the pitcher, basically being on time, more consistent, and making your swing as efficient as possible to the ball. And watching Kyren swing, you can see a great resemblance to Aaron Judge. There was a great side-by-side of what Kyren was doing last year in the article versus what he's doing this year in resemblance to Aaron Judge. John, it's a very clean swing. It's very short. He's starting in a different spot where his hands are, where the bat is. And comparing it to last year, his front foot is more open with his heel in the air at all times before he starts his swing. His leg kick hovers in the air longer, and he now finishes his swing with one hand on the bat instead of two. And that's an interesting adjustment,
a good thing.
Right?
That's a really good thing. Yeah, now, you don't want to lose the bat.
According to Ron Washington, he said, what I'm seeing from Kyren Paris is that he's able to stay on the ball a lot more, and he's not pulling off the ball.
Yeah, Kyren Paris said the swing change has given me the confidence to go up there, knowing that I'm putting myself in a position to have success, and it's definitely showing on the field. And confidence is the thing that Wash is happiest that Paris is bringing this spring. Wash said there's still areas that Paris needs to continue to get better at, but he likes how Paris isn't intimidated on the field like last season. One area where Wash would like to see improvement is his decision-making defensively. The decisions that he's referencing are being in the right place, going to the right base, but those are things that Wash thinks are going to come through with getting more experience.
Now, Kyren said that his goal this year is to make an impact on the big league roster, and he believes that his new swing and his new confidence are going to help him take steps towards that goal. Wash said, this is a different kid. He looks more confident in the way that he goes about his business, and he doesn't feel like he's somebody trying to earn his right. He actually feels like he belongs here, seems like he belongs here, acting like he belongs here. So, John, a couple questions about Kyren Paris. The first question I have for you is, you talked on a previous show that he could potentially be a quote-unquote shocking addition in response to somebody's question on Fan Mail Friday. And has he moved now from a shocking addition to an obvious addition to the opening day roster?
I still think it would be shocking because of the way that Wash has been talking about him. Mike, there's I'm of two minds this way. To put him on the bench at the major league level would be great because it's somebody you could trust off the bench to fill in for a guy, on a getaway game on a Thursday afternoon before they fly off somewhere, right? At the same time, it seems like Wash wants to see improvement from him. And the best place to do that would be to get into every game, to have a ton of at-bats. And I know Paris struggled across AA and AAA last year, but with the new swing changes, you might want to see how those play out in the minor leagues. And based on what Wash is saying, I think it still would be kind of a shock if Paris makes this opening day roster. Now, having said that, the more we see of Luis Rengifo has hamstring tightness.
Yeah.
Luis Rengifo was scratched from today's lineup. Luis Rengifo is going to be back, later on this week. The more we see that, the more I'm like, look, Wash, you don't have a choice. Like, you need to get Kyren Paris on this roster. And as far as the decision-making defensively, that's something that you might want Paris around Ron Washington and the Major League Club to help with, because that's a big part of what Wash does well for these guys, is to help them improve their defensive game. So if that's a missing piece for him, which I don't think I ever thought that it was, but, I'll trust Wash's judgment on that. At the same time, if he is on the Major League Club, perhaps you don't see him in there as often as you would like, but they do have some, if Renjifo's not going to be ready for opening day, perhaps it's Paris that gets that spot, so that does open up some more at-bats. So, like I said, Mike, I'm of two minds here. I think you can't go wrong either way. It's a difficult decision, and that's a better position to be in rather than not having a difficult decision to make. Does that make sense? It's a better position to be in a place where, man, it's really tough. Do I bring this guy on, or do I let him, cook in the minors a little bit more? I think that's a great place to be. What are your thoughts on Kyren Paris? Where do you think he ends up before opening day?
Feels like, and we're going to talk about this in the next segment, but it feels like Rengifo is going to probably be on the 10-day IL to start the season, just because he's been pushed back. We got some quotes from Wash and the team about Rengifo, which means that they're going to have an extra roster spot here. And they already have a roster spot with Neto being on the IL. And Paris has options. And I think, Johnny, it would be wise to perhaps put Kyren Paris at shortstop and have Kevin Newman play second base. Or if Newman's better at short, then have Kyren Paris play second base.
You've got options there.
I think that you can have some flexibility there. And if his bat is what his bat is right now, then I think that it adds to this lineup. I don't know if we fully have seen the impact of his bat, because a lot of the things that he has done have been in the middle of a game. So it's not necessarily against major league caliber pitching. There are some moments where it has been against major league caliber pitching. I do like the clutch gene that he's shown. He's been able to come through a couple of times late in the game, having the Angels come back. But I wonder if his bat will translate to an everyday major league bat while Neto is out, while Renjifo's trying to figure some things out. But John, if it does, I think this is the opportunity to try it out, because he's proven himself in spring. And I think if you talk about wanting to give guys confidence, right? We talked last year, opening day, Patrick Sandoval giving him the nod, and we kind of rolled our eyes like you just did, right? Like, what is that about? And it was almost a confidence boost, a tip of the cap, but not because he earned it.
Yeah.
John, Kyren Paris is earning it. Not earned, but earning it,
Right.
right?
In
And
the
so
process of earning. Yes.
absolutely. And that's what you want. And we'll talk about Kochanowicz on this show as well. You want them to make things really uncomfortable for you. You want them to make the decisions really difficult. Do we keep this guy or do we send him back down? I think if you want to give this guy a shot in the arm, you keep him on the opening day roster. And it's not because you're forcing somebody out. You have that flexibility right now with a big question about Rengifo and the IL stint that Neto's going to have to be on at least to start the season. And let's see what this kid can do. And if at worst he just can't do anything, then you've got Neto coming back and you've got Rengifo coming back. And so it's not going to hurt you. Plus you have Kevin Newman. And in the long game, like you can perhaps think about other players that you might want to bring up. Maybe you do bring in a Tim Anderson if Kyren Paris just falls apart, right? There's a lot of options here. I think you give him a shot because I think that he is earning the opportunity for opening day.
Yeah, especially if it's a bench spot. Like, to earn a bench spot is a lot different than earning a full-time role. And yeah, maybe when he first starts, it might have to be a full-time role until they get one of Rengifo or Zach Neto back. Hey, thanks for making the Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, just when the Halos think they have all the answers, Jack Kochanowicz changes the questions, and specifically about Reed Detmers. What do we mean by that? Well, we're going to get into that conversation coming right up.
Well, March is here, and all you college basketball nerds are nerding out, and I'm with you because March Madness is arriving, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on all of the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories to who's even going to cut down the nets and win the championship. And if you've got your eye on a few underdogs this year, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something to bet on, something exciting to see. And let FanDuel help you stay engaged. It's simple to use. Their app is really great. Download it or go to their website, fanduel.com, and you can get in on all of the college hoops actions all tournament long.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. By the way, if you want to help us out, whether you're watching on the video side or listening on the audio side, come on over to YouTube, find the Locked On Angels channel, help us get to 10K by opening day. We'd love 10K subscribers, so hit that subscribe button. And it helps put the show in front of more Angel fans because we want more conversation to happen among our fans here at Locked On Angels. So be sure you hit that subscribe button. We're going to continue our conversation about the Halos with Friday and Saturday's games. We'll start with Friday. It was supposed to be a split squad game, Mike. The game in Tempe against the Diamondbacks got canceled due to weather, and Yusei Kikuchi was supposed to get the start. Instead, he pitched indoors in the, hear this, club's new pitching lab. How about that? At least they had that option this year. And then the Angels did that to keep everyone else on schedule in the rotation. But there was a second game against the Royals that only went 6 innings before the weather called the game, didn't it, Mike?
Yeah, Jose Soriano started this one. John went 3 innings, allowed just 1 hit, but that hit was a 2-run home run to Bobby Witt Jr. in the first. Soriano walked 3, and he struck out 4. The home run was a fastball right down the middle, and the walks were probably more important to pay attention to because he was missing his spots and he was lacking control. However, it was wet, it was cold, and so I think that did impact what Jose Soriano was doing on the mound. I personally, as I watched this game, John, I personally didn't evaluate Jose Soriano so harshly because of the weather, because of the conditions. And so the guy gave up just 1 hit. It was the walks that really did the damage to him. And then the Angels couldn't come through offensively in this one. They weren't that strong. But so far, it feels a bit like the same Soriano that we had last year. But are you in my category? Weather really played a part in this, or do you think that there's more of an issue here that we need to pay attention to?
When you consider weather and you consider how many he walked, that does speak to a control problem, right? Missing your spots. It's wet. The ball's wet, slick, all that. And then if you're accidentally going to give a fastball down the middle, you're not going to want to do it to Bobby Witt Jr., right? That'd be the same thing as throwing a fastball down the middle to Mike Trout. And so he got punished for that. So when you say that this feels weather related, I'm willing to go there with that. However, it is the third start, Mike, and I feel like we can judge a little bit more critically and harshly after this start, because you want them to start honing in on what they do well. And I bring that point up because you said, is him looking like he did last season, is that a problem? I wouldn't expect him to look different from last season at this point. And what I mean by that is we had a very back and forth Jose Soriano. Sometimes he was lights out, and that's the guy that we hope that we're going to get. And sometimes he would have a little bit of a stinker. And for him to miss as much time as he did toward the end of the season and then just get back into a rhythm in some, real games, quote unquote, for spring training, I think you have to have at least those 3 starts to really get your feet back under you again, is what I mean to say. So for Soriano to see that he hasn't changed much from last season, well, that says, because he hasn't been pitching. And so for him to continue in spring, I would hope to see that improve. And I would hope to see him really start to nail down the things that he's trying to accomplish on the mound.
Offensively, Nolan Shonowell had 2 hits in that game, and he's hitting .269 with a over 700 OPS so far this spring, and that's 29 at bats. It's a good sign for him because he was struggling coming into this game. He had an RBI single in the first that scored Taylor Ward, and then he was thrown out at second trying to move up. Don't do that, Nolan. You don't have speed. And then Moncada got his first hit of the spring in this game. It was an RBI double in the 3rd inning. And then a pitcher, John, that we hadn't seen too much of in the spring, Aldeguerri, pitched in this game, and he pitched an inning, 2 hits, 3 Ks, gave up 2 home runs, and kind of one of those situations where he's a young guy, and then we got information the next day on Saturday that Aldeguerri, along with other players, were sent to minor league camp. Why don't you give us that list?
Yeah, so before the game on Saturday, the Angels optioned Sam Aldeguerri, Gustavo Quintero, Caden Dana, Jack Dashwood, Nico Cavadas. They all went to AAA Salt Lake. And then they had Connor Brogdon, Michael Darrell Hicks, Jose Fermin, Cole Fontenelle, Victor Gonzalez, Denzer Guzman, Carter Kieboom, George Clausen, Sammy Natera, and Nelson Rada and Sebastian Rivero were reassigned to minor league camp. Mike, the big thing there is, number one, we saw some names in that list that we've seen a lot of in spring. Mm-hmm. But to me, it seems like, okay, we've seen enough. Some of these guys need a little bit more work. And some of them were not expected to, make the opening day roster, right? Like, it was great to see George Clausen, but I don't think anybody expected him to be in the rotation coming into this season. So they gave these guys a lot of fair looks, but now it's time for them to get ready for the minor league seasons, gear up for that, and keep going and keep doing what they're doing. Obviously, Nelson Rada was having a great spring. He's back in minor league camp. Obviously, he wasn't going to make the opening day roster. I know people were like, put him on the roster, but it was like, hold on. Let that guy have another year. He's not even 20 yet. Now, the kicker here, Mike, is that relief pitcher Ryan Johnson has stayed with the major league club. I found that interesting. Did you find that interesting?
I did, because he's somebody that was drafted last year, and he hasn't had any major league appearances.
He's not played a professional game yet, technically.
Right. So he's still there. 3 games so far that he's pitched this spring, 5 innings, 3 Ks, no walks so far this spring. This includes 2 innings that he pitched on Saturday. Johnny got a big double play to get out of a 5th inning jam. And he's somebody that is in the mix for possibly being in the bullpen. So Jeff Fletcher from the OC Register tweeted this out on Saturday. He said, so here's the bullpen conversation as it stands. They need 8 relievers. Locks in the bullpen right now are Kenley Jansen, Ben Joyce, Jose Quijada, and Brock Burke. Likely are Ryan Zefferjon, Hans Kraus, and Jose Suarez as a long man. And then there's 1 spot left. So there's Sean Anderson, Garrett McDaniels, who's a Rule 5 guy. There's Peterson, there's Johnson, and then maybe even potentially Chase Silseth. Now the question is, with 1 spot left, what do you do with that spot? Do you give it to somebody like Ryan Johnson? But you have to have Garrett McDaniels on this roster if you want to keep him around.
Yeah.
And so what do you do, John? What if you're Ron Washington? What kind of conversations are you having with your team, and what decisions are you making about this bullpen?
Yeah, I'm keeping Garrett McDaniels because he is a Rule 5 pick. If he doesn't make the roster, he's got to be returned, and then you got to pay. I think you got to pay $25,000, maybe $50,000 back to the Dodgers. So
Artie's not going to do that.
No, right? Yeah, there you go. I'm not doing that. No, look, McDaniels has had a great spring as well, so there's no reason not to keep him around. And I know that the talk has been 8 relievers, but Mike, there's 2 spots really on this roster,
right? And
perhaps even 3 if Luis Rengifo also goes on the 10-day IL.
Yeah.
Zach Neto starts on the 10-day IL, and then you have a roster spot open, and you have to pull from the 40-man if Rengifo and Neto go on the 10-day. And so you got to look to see who is on your 40-man, and McDaniels is, and he's got to make the team. You might even have one more bullpen piece to have 9 relievers. Now that might feel like overkill because it does seem like the Angels are going to have more needs in the infield, but I think McDaniels, is the guy to go with. I know it's another lefty in the bullpen, but at the same time, I think that this bullpen is looking pretty good right now. If we stick to 8, that's 4 lefties and 4 righties if McDaniels joins it. But you could have like that starting pitcher option, like a Silseth or a Jack Kochanowicz or Reed Detmers or even a Sam Bachman if he's healthy and ready to go. But to me, I think it's really interesting to have this conversation about Ryan Johnson, not only because he's right out of college and has never pitched in a professional game, but number 2, he's the compensatory pick for Shohei Ohtani. And it's like, hey, like light it up, dude. Like kick some butt for us because at least we got something we can be proud of from that pick, right?
Yeah, he is probably the perfect guy for that compensatory pick because he just seems like he doesn't care. He just goes out there and he plays, right? And in talking with Ron Washington, he said that I'm not ready to say anything about Ryan Johnson making the major league roster on opening day. He's going to get the ball a couple more times. We're going to see where it goes. Wash kind of always talks this way when it comes to adding people to the roster. He sounded like that when he talked about Kyren Paris, and he's going to sound similar as he's talking about Ryan Johnson. He did say that Ryan Johnson is very composed and he pounds the strike zone and he has a very good arm. And so there seems to be an impression that Ryan Johnson has made on Ron Washington. And then one thought here, Johnny, is Rengifo. We talked a bit about him being out. He is somebody that Ron Washington said they're going to take their time with, and they're not going to push him because he's been sick and because he's got that hamstring issue. So that was all before the game and everything that took place before the game. But this game actually was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think one of the major highlights was the fact that Joe Adell hit his second home run of the spring, a 3-run homer to center field.
Yeah.
And he used the toe tap, Mike. It wasn't the leg lift, as he refers to it. It's not so much a leg kick, but more of a lift. And he's been shifting back and forth between that leg kick and toe tap, but he has a homer. That was a grand slam with the leg kick earlier in spring. And then in this game, he had the 3-run homer with the toe tap. And Mike, I noticed something that I think we failed to give Joe Adell credit for. And that is matching the timing of the pitch that the pitcher is going to throw. Mm-hmm. And Joe Adell was on that, I believe it was a curveball. And to not have that leg kick in use and to go with the toe tap, he knew what speed he needed to get his swing going. And in that situation, it wasn't a big leg lift. It was a quick little toe tap. And he still was able to reach down, make contact, and hit that ball out. So for you and I and some of our everydayers, we were talking about it, and it was like, Joe, don't mess up a good thing. Don't change what you've been doing. And Joe's words were, well, I want to make adjustments along the way and da-da-da. That was an example of him making an adjustment. And I almost felt like, hey, we could eat our words a little bit watching him do that because obviously, he knows what he's doing better than we do. But the other thing was, it was all in the timing of that hit that just, he nailed it in that curveball. And so to me, I felt like a little bit more confidence of, okay, he knows what he's doing. He knows when to leg lift and he knows when to toe tap. And in that situation, he knew the off speed was coming and he got himself ready with the toe tap. So I was really encouraged by that.
Speaking of adjustments, Nolan Shonowell, again, in this game, looked really good. He had a home run, John, to left center. First home run he's ever hit to left center. He's always been pulling home runs. And so that's big on him. And then Tyler Anderson started in this game, 3 1/3, 2 hits, 2 earned, a walk, 2 Ks, 2 home runs. It was his third start. He's 0-1 with an 8.22 ERA so far in 7 2/3 innings pitched with 6 Ks. I thought his quote was interesting. He said, "I felt good. A couple of pitches I probably wouldn't have thrown in real games, but just throwing them in the spring with 2 strikes. My command was good. There's some pitches that I was trying some stuff on and working on some stuff to mess around to see what the hitters would do." So that's part of the reason why you see some hits, you see some home runs from Tyler Anderson. He said during the season, all you can do is just get ahead of the count, and that's what he wants to do. But he said in spring, I'm trying some things, and sometimes it's worked, and sometimes it hasn't worked.
Look, that's what spring training is for. You can't tell me. Mike, have you ever tried to shoot a half-court shot in basketball before? Have you ever done it in a game that actually counts and matters? And you know what I mean? Unless
I didn't make the team.
Right, exactly. That's funny. Jeff, our brother Jeff made the team, didn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Guys, we got to relax. You can't look at an 8.22 ERA. Oh my gosh, what's he going to do? Why are we having Anderson on this team? He just said it right there. Yeah. I threw some pitches that I wouldn't try in a real game, but it's spring training and I'm messing around with release point. I'm messing around with, some stuff that I'm working on and see how hitters react to it. It's all trial and error at this point. So I think it's nice to everybody just take a breath, take a breather. Everything's going to be okay once opening day arrives.
Johnny, on Sunday, Jack Kochanowicz started. He threw 4 perfect innings against the Reds, and he was so efficient that he threw out of the bullpen after he reached his pitch count. He threw in 4 perfect innings. He threw 44 pitches, and then they had to stick him in the bullpen because he didn't actually reach the pitch count that he wanted to reach in the game.
That's great. I texted Jeff Carr, who runs Locked on Reds, and I said, hey, so Kochanowicz is making a really good case for himself, just in case you were curious. I said, the K rate was kind of the concern, but he did get some Ks. And Jeff just said, just an absolute dominant pitching performance all around. So shout out Jeff and Locked on Reds over there. Cause we connected with the Reds yesterday and it was just like, I'm sure Jeff was wondering who the heck is this guy? Right. So that I felt like, I'll just go ahead and text him.
It's pronounced Kochanowicz for everybody, because we didn't know it first when we first met this guy. John, is the question changing now? The question isn't we got to do something with Reed Detmers. I think the narrative, the question around everything now is, oh man, I don't know if I want to give up on Detmers because Kochanowicz is really pitching well. It's not that, hey, Detmers is here and he's earned it. I think people are like, well, if we say yes to Kochanowicz, then does that mean we're giving up on Reed? Tell me your thoughts on that.
Mike, do you want to win or do you want to develop?
I want to win.
Okay. Then you want Kochanowicz on this team.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to develop, then you're going to put Reed on this team and you're going to put him in the starting rotation. You're going to let him keep doing what he's been doing. And obviously, I think each start has gotten better for Reed Detmers. I think the confidence issue is still the big question. But if you want Kochanowicz to develop, then you're going to put him in the minor leagues. And so I think that's really what it comes down to. Are you a I want to win or are you a I want to develop kind of fan? And I don't think there's anything wrong with being either one. It's just that's essentially what it comes down to for me. And Kochanowicz is making it really difficult, to use your word, uncomfortable to make this decision for the coaching staff and the managers and all that stuff. So I think that's a really great thing. That's a great problem to have. And the fact is Kochanowicz is making it really difficult and uncomfortable on this coaching staff, right?
Yeah, and I love that he is. My gut says that they're going to probably have him be in the minor leagues to start the season because they're going to have Reed Detmers in the starting rotation.
And you don't want to waste time with him either. Yeah. Like you want him getting his reps and starting games and doing his thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I'd rather see him, John. I really think I'd rather see him. And if I'm moving some pieces around, I'm getting rid of Suarez and I'm having Reed be my long guy. I know, and maybe he doesn't want to be the long guy, but I think that seems to be the most logical way forward right now, because Kochanowicz he's had an incredible spring, but just after yesterday, it made me go, all right, what are we doing?
And it was big league Reds.
Yes.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. And that team's going to be good. I think that team's going to be really good. Speaking of good, John, Mickey Moniak had that fantastic sliding catch in the top of the 4th inning, slid all the way into left center. Loved that. And then offensively, this game started with a Ward double. O'Hoppe hit a double, knocked him in. Moncada had a home run in this game. He's got a hit now. He's got a home run. It was great to see those last 2 games. The Angels felt like a major league club, and it felt like they were coming through offensively, and that their pitching staff against major league quality hitters were actually coming through.
We were just talking about, man, what do they do about Moncada if he doesn't turn it around? Well, this weekend, he found his bat. And then he's also making some really stud plays on behalf of Jack Kochanowicz over there at third base. So I'm excited for him and his bat to get going. It looks like it has over this weekend. Mike, real quick before we wrap up, O'Hoppe, you like him in that second spot?
He seems to be comfortable in that second spot. I know that one of our everydayers tweeted at us and said it might just be that they're trying to get him a bunch of at-bats and then take him out of the game, and that makes sense, and that's a wise baseball decision. But he seems to be pretty comfortable in that second spot, so I think we need to pay attention to that, because Neto, according to Wash, is probably going to be 5.
Yeah.
And so O'Hoppe seems to be great at the 5 spot, but if Neto's there, I wonder if maybe they're looking at Logan at number 2.
There's only one thing left to say. Decisions. All right, that was 2 things.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB with our friend Sully. You can find his show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. If you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, get in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you there. We always do our best to, schedule permitting for life, right? To get back to you in the comments section. But you guys always bring great conversation and questions. Mike, what do we have? This tease. What do we have on Tuesday's show? I don't even know what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, well, Vlad Guerrero Jr. said something over the weekend that caught the attention of all baseball fans, but specifically caught the attention of Halo fans. So we're going to share what he said, and we're going to share why it matters. And apparently John's going to be filled in with you tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. We hope you'll come back and join us. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday.
I'm breaking news. Dun, 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 dun.